Yo, what's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Casty. I'm one of the HGS commentators, and we have another behind the screen where we take a professional player, coach, content creator, and do a little bit of interview with them, and then do a bit of film review as well, so you can really get to know the person behind the screen. And today we have none other than veteran for way too long, over at Charlotte, all the way through the open bracket into pool play, upset after upset into the top 12, the man who's willing to do anything to win, but he'll just tell you that he's just doing his job. Chris Common, ladies and gentlemen. Common, why don't you tell the people something about yourself?
Yeah, again, I've been competing for a long time. I've been playing Halo. I think my first time playing Halo was CE. I owned my first Halo was Halo 2 on the 360 in like '07, I think was like when I got it. Or Halo 2 was the first one I got, but then Halo 3 was the first one I started competing in. And then the first lane I went to was 2009, which was Meadows 2009, I believe was the very first lane that I went to. And I've kind of been competing off and on since then. And like I said earlier, the biggest thing for me after I got done playing sports in high school was I've always been a competitor at heart. I've always loved getting better at something and, grinding and just trying to be the best that I can be at something. And after high school, and obviously I didn't play college sports or anything like that, and gaming kind of took over for that spot for me. And I've kind of been putting a lot of time into Halo. And, obviously here, however many years later, I'm still playing and enjoying it just as much as I did day one. And obviously love it. So excited to be here with you guys.
Excited to have you. It's funny because I've done a few of these, and I'm noticing a bit of a pattern when it comes to a lot of the competitive gamers, especially the ones at the top level, is that a lot of, I almost said us, I've never done anything in my life. I don't know why. I'm not going to say us. A lot of y'all, but I'm going to include myself in the category just because you get your competitive nature not from when you turn 22, 23, when you decide you want to play Halo. It comes from when you were younger. And a lot of us have played sports when we were in middle school, high school, maybe even a little bit of college. I know a few of us played basketball and whatnot. I know Carmen talked about doing boxing and Muay Thai and different things like that. I know you mentioned sports. Would you mind diving into what sports were you into and at what level?
Yeah, so the first one, baseball. I mean, I got into baseball, t-ball, all the way through going into middle school, basically. And then around middle school, I kind of got, I don't know, bored of baseball a little bit. Started trying some new things. Then got into football, basketball. Kind of gave baseball up for a little bit, and then high school, I mainly stuck with football for the entirety of high school. And then, like I said, between a couple injuries and stuff like that, I started picking up gaming pretty heavily, especially during my high school years. Again, that would have been 2009 would have been my sophomore year, so that would have been my first LAN and everything. So during high school is really when I started figuring out what competitive gaming and esports were. I mean, I don't even think it was really esports back then as much as it is today. I don't even know if it really had that term widely known back then as it does now. But yeah, once I got done with high school, still had that drive, and this is literally the only thing I could find that gave me some type of resemblance to tournament days, similar to having Friday night games and the hype for it, and all the work that you put in with the teammates and all that stuff. So I mean, it's almost like a 1-to-1 for me in terms of what those experiences were like, outside of obviously I'm in my room instead of actually being outside doing things. So a little bit different there, but same experience overall as far as the effort and the grind and the rewarding feeling whenever you're seeing the progress.
It's amazing to me how similar a lot of, like I said, a lot of stories are. Even as you're talking, I'm hearing my own story. And I played basketball all my life. I grinded. I was big on the fundamentals and whatnot. I was the guy to go to the street to the local park and try to bring fundamentals over there. What I'm learning over here in AAE, what I'm over here learning in regular in high school, I'm trying to bring over to you guys and whatnot. And it wasn't until I dislocated my knee the first time is when I already knew of Halo. Like I remember my first actual interaction with Halo was when like one of my friends, like I think it was like English class, he was talking to another guy and he was like, yeah, people think they're good because they're using the sword. Dude, get out of here, or something like that. And that was my first interaction with Halo. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, oh, it's a game called Halo. I was like, what the hell are you guys talking about? God bless. But it's funny because like once I dislocated my knee, I wanted something to fill the competitive void, and eventually I tried Halo and I fell in love. And eventually I was like going between, you know, I'd have a car, so I'd run to the park, play basketball, run back home, play Halo, and eventually I was like, why the hell am I running to the park? This is I'm like I get the same competitive like I'd have a car, like I said, just run to the park, sweat it up, and then be exhausted, run back home, and it was like, dude, this sucks. I'm just gonna go game, bro. Like,
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, the big thing for me, I mean, I played a little bit off and on, you know, even during the times that I wasn't injured, but I blew out, you know, my meniscus in one of my knees during my high school career in football, and during some of that downtime and stuff. That was kind of like went deeper into, you know, taking it a little bit more serious because I just had more free time. You know, I wasn't practicing, I wasn't, you know, I had a lot of downtime, so grinded and played Halo. And you know, I think once I went to that first tournament in 2009, that my first like big MLG tournament, it was over from that point on. I was addicted. Just that experience in general. Even though I went and like did terribly, and you know, had really nothing to show for it. It was just the environment and just the experience of all, just having everybody there together, just competing, seeing it live. Like, yeah, I was hooked.
it's just, you know, you were still passionate. It's just like it just switched over from like, you know, one side to another, and we're gonna talk a lot more about that as well. You mentioned and I'm sorry, you know, you ended up having that injury. But what position did you play in football?
So my team was a little weird. We ran like a really weird variation of defense. But basically I was like an outside linebacker, like the equivalent of an outside linebacker for what most people would consider right now in football. We ran like a 3-5. So like we had like five linebackers and I was technically like on the edge. So I was kind of like a defensive end slash linebacker. My job was really just to like contain the outside, and then, you know, obviously on any passing downs, I got to rush the quarterback. So that was fun. But that was mainly what I did the entirety of my football career, was play the defensive side.
Nice. Like I said, I played basketball, but I didn't take conditioning really seriously at all. I'm gonna be a little cocky. I was so skilled that I didn't have to condition. Okay? Like that's but no, but I needed to take it more serious, and I did it. And my freshman year, my coach, I say forced, he say encouraged. You know, we have two different ways of saying it. But maybe play football and during the off season to stay in shape, or to play into shape really. But I didn't want to play. And I was always like I was always undersized small forward. I'd bang with centers. I'd bang with power forwards. It didn't matter. I've always been like a pretty stocky guy, regardless. And so they wanted me to play tight end. And it was funny because I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna play, but that's fine. But in practice, I'm like, wait, you want me to put my hands on this gentleman and stop him from moving past me? And then you want me to catch the ball? Oh my God. And you have people attacking my knees. I'm like, you guys are crazy. And your practices are 10 times harder than first of all, you spend most of the time between whistles on the ground, laying around. Why are your practices so freaking hard? In basketball, we're running up in the court probably 2.5 to 3 miles a game. You guys run, and then you take a break. And then you run, and then you take a break. And then you run. Why am I running up bleachers, Chris? I don't understand.
Conditioning, you gotta be ready for that fourth quarter, man.
But half the game of breaks.
No, doesn't mean that you're not gassed by the time you hit the fourth. Especially if you go to like, I mean, I was lucky. I went to a bigger school. Obviously, I'm from Indiana. My school was like 6A, which is like the top level for like high school sports in Indiana. But some of the smaller schools, I mean, you're playing both sides the whole game.
Yeah.
Man, I know Breaking shot my teammate. I mean, he played both sides. I mean, he went to real small school, but he played both sides the entire time. Yep. So you talk about breaks. I mean, yeah, I guess like maybe occasionally halftime.
We did as well in high school. We played both sides as well. That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah. I hated football practices. It was so hard, bro. Oh my god. But I will say like boxing out a set, like if you played basketball, like boxing out a center and a power forward and then grabbing a re, or even just clearing out for a teammate was already like empowering. Like, you know, I was already cool. But when I got to put my hands like right on somebody's chest and like literally stop their forward momentum, who's bigger than me, I'm not gonna lie, bro. It almost made me want to actually play football. Cause I'm like, yo, I talked a lot of trash, bro.
That was that. Hey, listen, that was my part too. I love lining up and just, you know, especially having like a tackler, especially someone that you knew that you were beating the entire game. That was the most fun part. Where you just like bully them. But I had my fair share of people that, you know, I had my games where I met my match on the offensive side. So
Of course.
there's always going to be those games where you kind of, you know, have your struggles too.
Now you talked about watching football too. I'm assuming NFL. I'm assuming. I know. I believe you're from Florida, born and raised. I'm gonna say, or no? Okay.
No, so I'm a transplant. I've been in Florida since 2017, I think, is when I initially moved here. So
Okay.
it's been a good while now. But I spent basically my entire life growing up, like I said earlier, Indiana. Grew up in Indianapolis,
Sorry.
like right
Excuse me.
outside of
Yep.
Indianapolis, and like I said, lived there 20 something years. So it's, you know, I grew up as a Colts fan, grew up as a Notre Dame football fan,
Colts fan.
went to Indiana University. So, you know, I by trade IU basketball, big thing for me. But yeah, I follow pretty much every level of like basketball, every level of football. You know, occasionally watch hockey when it's playoff time, baseball when it's playoff time, soccer when it's World Cup time, you know, Premier League matches. I kind of get my trade like on pretty much any sport that I can, just because, you know, the more I watch and the more I get involved in like rooting for people and all that stuff, I kind of, you know, again, I just love sport in general, just competition in general. So it's always fun for me. Big red zone guy. Watch all the games on Sundays. So
So who's our NFL team?
the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay. So
by
you
far.
stayed with the Indianapolis. So come on, man. I want to root for Proton game, but you out here just like rooting for losers, bro. Come on, dude.
I mean. All right. Wait. We're gonna chill out. We're losers recently. Colts, my entire life up until like the last few years, one of the most winningest teams in the NFL.
Regular
Outside,
season.
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the Patriots had their dynasty, so it's like, you know, what are you gonna do?
It's like being the
They're
best
cheating.
team in open bracket. Like, okay, cool. Like, what are you doing against a pool play?
My team didn't cheat. I can't compete with Tom Brady in cheating. Like, I don't know.
There's hold on. There's 15 other teams in the league, and you're gonna point out one. Okay, well, okay. So what's your excuse for the other 14?
They won. They were the one winning. So I don't know.
Regular season. What happened in the playoffs?
The Patriots were cheating in the playoffs. I played them every year. They videotape practices. They had all my hand signals, bro. I don't know. They've been cheating.
They deflate one football. And
Meanwhile,
you got breaking shot running around with the damn Victrix controller. I don't see you saying anything about the Victrix controller, and that's 10 times more Microsoft speed than any other controller.
The deflate thing is separate. Okay, that was a secondary thing. They were caught videotaping practices and doing all that stuff before the deflate. So you know, once a cheater, always a cheater. Hate the Patriots, by the way.
I could tell.
Oddly enough, tell me this isn't odd. Grew up a Colts fan, hated the Patriots, obviously, for the entirety. Get into season 1 of Infinite, signed to Auction Esports, owned by who? The Patriots. Robert Kraft was cutting my checks. Isn't that some type of sick joke?
That is hilarious.
Isn't that a sick joke?
Dude, that is not only proof that there is a God, that is proof that he has a sense of humor. I'm sorry. That is too funny, bro.
I went out before Kansas City. We go out to Boston, to the facility and everything. I'm out there, you know, getting pictures in front of Gillette Stadium. You know, they're making me do all. I'm like, man, this is some type of sick joke. Like, I'm living a dream, but at the same time, like, I can't help but think in the back of my head, like, man, like, younger me would hate myself for this. You know, younger me would hate myself for this.
Yo, that is hilarious, guys. That is, you cannot script this, bro. That is too funny.
Crazy, literally crazy.
Oh my god! So I just have a question. Like, if you had the chance to meet him, like have dinner, there's Auction Esports, top, just say you win a tournament and whatnot, and Robert Kraft says we're gonna invite you over to dinner. Would you have gone? Like, fly you out to private jet and get to sit?
I would have had to. I sold my soul to that. I knew once I signed and once, I mean, I signed to Auction before they got bought by the Patriots, but once the news came out that was like what was happening, that Robert Kraft was like, funding and being the biggest investor and like kind of purchasing all that stuff. I told myself, I was like, all right, I guess I got to go out and get a Tom Brady jersey. And like, I'm fully, I mean, I can't, I got to buy into the whole thing now. It's the only way that's going to work.
This man's soul is so. Hey, you know what? That's love for the game. That's love for gaming. He had to sell his soul to make it in this industry. You you brought up Halo 2 a little while ago, and so obviously you've been playing for quite some time. But I'm assuming you didn't just like go in, like jump into like the MLG playlist, which was back then, or a ranked playlist. Like, what were some of your favorite game modes when you were playing Halo 2 and maybe early Halo 3?
Oh, I mean, I'll be honest, I played it all. I mean, I initially started off like when I didn't even have an Xbox of my own, going over to friends' houses, and I would just play, Team Slayer, just try to get my rank up, Snipers, try to get my rank up. I didn't really get into hardcore until, you know, really until I started figuring out what competitive Halo was. An interesting story, about that. The way that I kind of found out about it, I was a clan kid. Like that's my first gamer tag ever was had a clan, like RTG was the clan, was in front of my gamer tag. That was literally my first gamer tag ever. I was like literally in the clan the minute I had an Xbox, right? And
All right.
I was in this clan with Eco, believe it or not. Me and Eco were in the same clan when we were 13, and he was actually the one that was like more interested in the competitive side. We had like a quote unquote like a pro team like in our clan or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and learned about them. And then he was like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" And I was like, "Nothing." He's like, "You want to watch MLG Chicago?" I'm like, What is MLG Chicago? Like, what is? I don't even know what that is." Um, and sure enough, like that's my first memory of getting introduced was like literally sitting in like a lobby on Halo 2, like watching this tournament together with him and like learning what like MLG was. And he's kind of the one that introduced me to it. Also, he's one of my biggest, I guess, influences in all this. I wouldn't even be here today if it wasn't for him showing me what, Halo was at a competitive level back then when we were 13, 14 years old.
Oh. What was his gamer tag back then? Was it
Oh, dude, that's a funny thing about him. He was really big on changing tags, so he'd constantly have something new. It felt like every month. I mean, he had tags as weird as like Ice Frag, Quad V2. Like, I mean, he had a bunch of ridiculous ones that he used to rock back then. And then he didn't really like stick to one until like Halo 3 when he was like unlegit, and he kept that until I guess like the beginning of Halo 5 when he changed to Eco.
so you got through competitive gaming from which I guess you can call like the clan wars and whatnot, and you partying up with the clan, like that's that in itself was like maybe like the first step into competitive, and then Eco kind of drove. That is really cool. Okay, wow. I
Very
didn't.
interesting. Very interesting to like sit there and like be like, damn, like because it's even crazy, sit there and watch him like ascend to where he was at. Because like back then, he's probably better than me back then for sure. I mean, we're whatever young kids, so I wasn't even like looking at it like from that perspective. But to see there and like watch him play and put all the time in, and then go into like the Splice era during H5 and winning his like first few tournaments and stuff. Like it's it's been crazy to watch. And it's been something that's motivated me. Like well, if you can put the time in and do it. Not saying I'm never going to be the same player as Eco or anything like that, or to that caliber. But I mean, that's kind of like my motivation for it. Is like, hey, I've sat there and watched him go through being a clan kid, being a tournament winner.
You mentioned when you talk about Eco, one of the things that I think about is his play style being big brain player. Actually, I think Frosty called him at one point the smartest player in Halo. At one point, um, and that's what I think about when I think of his play style. What what is Chris Common's play style? What do you bring to the competitive table?
I mean, I'm like a walking like point 0.8, point 0.9, like KD. Like I'm nothing, nothing crazy on my end. I'm not going to be the one that's going to. I'll occasionally have my like pop off games, I guess, if I absolutely like have to. But I mean, my role is like it's weird, and it's evolved a lot over the years. But for me, I'd say I've got like mixtures of like now, especially like being the guy that's going to be in the mix with like a lot of the OBJ work. I'll be the guy, picking up the ball, rotating the ball, doing the king of the hill work, um, leading in assists on my team, leading, getting close to top damage on my team. I'll die the most on my team. Like it's really like any facet of the game that I feel like I can impact, whether that be, being the one to initiate a push, being the one to, hold the ball and rotate, whatever needs to be done in the time, I'm going to do it. And that's kind of like where my game's evolved to. So I don't really have like, I guess like I'll do the dirty work, whatever needs to be done. If it needs to be done, I'm going to do it. And then I think lately, like last like year or so, I've really been working on kind of like building up myself as more of like an IGL too. So like in the game, like I'm trying to be like the one that's kind of like in control of like, okay, what are we playing for? Like what is our goal? What are we trying to do? What do we, so like I'm trying to be more of a, commander in that sense too in game for my team. Um, but it's unique because I don't really think there's like a ton of people out there that like obviously everybody plays for the win. I mean, especially at a high level, you have to. Everybody has to play for a win on the team. But you're right, like everybody kind of has like their niche, like breaking shots, like kind of have the flashy KDs and pop off games and stuff like that. And he might not, you might never see him like be like super, objective efficient. You're not gonna see him have like point eights in a tournament, point nines in a tournament. Like he's gonna be popping off, doing his thing. Like that's his what he's good at. For me, it's like I've kind of got little bits and pieces of all that, and I might not be as flashy as like a breaking shot or any of those guys, but I feel like I can shoot pretty well when I need to.
I mean, considering you play, I think the last time I checked, I always like to check on people's sensitivities. I feel like sensitivity kind of leads to playstyle as well in some ways and whatnot. I think you play like 477. I want to say at one point in time, maybe
Yeah,
five.
that's my current sense right now is 477, which oddly enough, I just recently, right before Charlotte, I want to say Orlando was my last event playing like a regular low sense. Like I played like 4XL, like basically 5-5, like leading up to like all last year, and then afterwards I tried a faster sensitivity, and I enjoy it. So
Yeah. To me, it's more fun. I have more fun on a higher sense, and you'll be surprised with how much you can affect the game and the map when you just that little bit extra. I love it. I really do. Um, you mentioned like this Swiss Army knife type of play style. When you were telling me this is what I'm thinking. Kind of doing it all. Is there any players that influenced that type of play style? Maybe that you draw bits and pieces, maybe not exactly them, but draw bits and pieces from that influence your play style.
yeah, I mean, I think like there's like three big ones for me that like I go back to. And I wouldn't say that my play style is like mirrors any of them. I think I've taken like bits and pieces of their game for me. Obviously, Eco being the person that like got me introduced to this whole thing has been like a big influence in terms of like his ability to be an IGL in game and how smart he is, and just being very consistent, and just doing whatever. He'll have his pop off games. Some games will just be 11-11, but he's doing what he needs to do to win the game. So like he's been a big influence for me. APG, for the longest, ever since at least H5 going into even some of the online MCC games and stuff. Like I've been taking a lot of APG's game, and then I'd say even lately like a lot of formal too. Like I think those three for me are like the three that mainly I look at. And I'm like, okay, like little bits and pieces of each one of those guys. In terms of like APG, very do it all for his team, objective, efficient. Whatever he needs, just super smart. Eco leading, again, doing whatever he needs to do to win the game. And then formal, I think from like the ability to just kind of like go in and just especially on like some of those pushes, like kind of like lead the way and kind of like do all the damage and just go in, and now his team's playing off him. So I think those three for me are like the big three.
It's funny you mentioned like some of those players like especially like when I think of like a formal and even players that have a similar play style that go in and like do that damage, and then even when they die, like it's almost like sometimes you can almost be like more valuable dead than alive. I get to like look at the map and like a third person view and see like, okay, this person with this person, like, and really kind of like play call even more actually with that on top of the damage you almost put down. So I always find that interesting. Because I suck, so I'm more valuable dead than alive, because at least I get to talk more. Like I'm calling I'm like, you two are together. You fly in. I'm like, you're by yourself, stay alive. Anchor a little bit and whatnot. Get that cross map bottom. Help your teammates. Like I suck when I'm alive. When I'm dead, I'm a valuable player. I'm like that coach, bro.
I'm kind of the same way. I think that's why I die so much on my team, because most of the time, and I make jokes with them all the time about it, but it's like I feel like I'll throw my life to like start a push or whatever. Like I'll just die. I'll just do some damage and die for the cause. Like I'll just over challenge somebody so my teammate can push up on something, and then hopefully the play goes well. And then while I'm dead, it's like, all right, we need to do this now that we got these kills. Do this, do this, do this. And I'm like talking more and like trying to like command more like while I'm dead. Like it's kind of weird how that works out for me. Obviously, it's probably not the most efficient way to do things, but that's just kind of like where I'm at right now.
Like that in-game coach. But I feel like you like every. I feel like every team needs like even if I want to take the word IGL of it, but someone, at least one or two players that can go down, see the map from a bigger picture, and help guide the troops and help organize. I feel like without that, it's just call outs, maybe a little bit of small talk, but there's no direction. So I feel like that role is important. When it comes to that, I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, I'd say I think that's probably like the biggest thing that like I wouldn't say it's like something that bothers me at all, but it's like one thing that I look at when like from like an outside perspective when people like look at teams. I feel like those players on those teams that kind of like have that responsibility or like are like big influence on those teams in terms of like what's happening in game. Outside of the ecos and some of the bigger names, like people don't look at like top 8 teams or like top 12 teams at all and like try to look and say, oh, this person on the team is the one that's setting stuff up. And I feel like as much as like stats and all that stuff and the glory of doing the big plays and all that stuff, like I have more fun knowing that like a play went well because I set up and like predicted and set us up for it to work out well, rather even if I was the first one that died and had no influence outside of doing the initial damage on it, I'm like, well, that worked out really well for us. Like glad that worked out,
Yeah, even the information you fed was valuable, though. Like the anticipation, like you went down, but okay, I think they're gonna push here. They're gonna send 2 people over here, or 3 people over here. Let's divert our attention to there. Don't worry about this side of the map because I only saw one play. That information that you then gained and feed might have what led to that play working out in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that I get more joy doing that now than I do winning a BR fight or like getting a crazy snipe clip. Like I have more fun like being like, oh well, I just outthought the entire other team with like this one play. Like okay, cool, like we hit out this way and it worked, and we countered what we thought they were gonna do. And like to me, I look back on that like, damn, that was a good play call. Pat myself on the back, try to like gas myself up for every little play call I go right because I know my teammates are sitting there looking at my .8 and my negative KD, and I'm like, well, I'm bringing something to the table, guys. Did some OBJ, got the couple play calls right. Like, pat myself on the back, boys. Y'all can have all the glory.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned. I want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like from Oxygen Esports to Proton Gaming, many, including myself, sleeping on you and your squad. To be honest, and it's gone throughout your career. In fact, me and Trey joked about it, but it's real. I feel like it is real. But I want to know, how do you feel like the fact that people are underrating you as a player? People are underrating the squads that you're on. They put together, and it feels like you're always fighting to prove something. How does that make you feel?
I mean, I don't really care, to be fair. Like, to me, like I know that when I put the effort in, I put the time in with the team, and we sit there and we have success or we have failures, and we're working towards a goal, whatever the case is. At the end of the day, as long as we keep putting our head down and keep getting better and better and better and better, eventually there's going to be a point where people are going to be, they're not going to be able to say anything about it. They're not going to be able to sit there and say anything because I'm consistently going out there and getting written off and me and the squad are proving people wrong, going to turns, beating people that we shouldn't be, beating teams on paper that are better than us. And for me, like we all kind of love being the underdog, breaking shot, player that people considered onliner, people didn't really give the respect that he deserved, came in, first tournament on a team that, he believed in, and we all believed in each other. Popped off his first tournament together, like getting in a champ bracket for the first time. Posey, another player similar to me, just been underrated his entire career, right? Like Haynes, I mean, dude, beginning of the game when I was seeing with Haynes on auction, nobody knew who Haynes was. Haynes didn't really play Halo 5. Everybody doubted him. Everybody said, oh, like, that guy's not very good. I mean, he ended up being one of the best players in the game before he retired. I mean, look at the last two tournaments, KD leaderboards. I mean, top five Orlando, top 10 Charlotte. Like, I mean, you can't deny that stuff. So it's like people can say all they want, look at names, and look at who their favorite players are and what teams are what. But at the end of the day, we're going to work hard, believe in each other, buy into the system that we've got, and hopefully continue to get to a point where we're going out to these tournaments, we're upsetting teams that we shouldn't beat, and then at the end of the day, people are going to be like, wow, like dialed that common guy, dialed that Posey guy, dialed these guys, and here they are beating my favorite team, beating, competing with these guys. So eventually the respect will be there. I just don't really listen to like the outside noise because I know my value as a player and like where we're as a team and who we can compete with, and we're just going to continue to get better. So
And to be honest with you, and I'm not even just gassing, but I feel like that transition's already beginning to happen. I feel like you're starting to slowly go from, okay, you're underdogs in this matchup, this matchup, to now, like when I think of where we're at right now, and this is my opinion. I think you have, Optic, Phase, and then right below SSG. That's your top echelon right now. I think that the players that are fighting for top six, top three, I'm gonna put like native white, native red, right there, and then that next like top eight legitimately fighting for the top 12 fighting for top eight and legitimate contender for top six. I'm gonna put you in this in the boats of the Sentinels and the Rebellions and the and I would even say like the Team Meta Elites and the Avengers and whatnot. But I feel like you're slowly starting to get up there, and people are starting to see you as the favorites in a lot of these matchups. So I feel like you slowly are starting to get there from going into like, okay, there's no way this team has a chance to. Oh, I can see them taking a game or taking it to game 5. Or I think these guys are the favorites. I think they advance forward,
which I think is awesome. I mean, obviously, I still feel like we haven't gotten top 8 on land. We haven't been to that point. I feel like the native white series for top 8 at Charlotte was close, and we felt really good about all those games that we had against them, obviously. But when you talk about all those teams and you look at like recent performances, even playing Optic and some of these 3-0s that we've had in like the last the 4K and stuff like that. I mean, we look back at those games and we're like, okay, cool, like we're playing the best teams in the world, Optic, SSG, FaZe, and they're the best, right? They're really the best teams out there, and we're sitting there, and we may not win games, we may not win series yet, but we know where we're at in these games and how close they are, and that it comes down to a couple plays. And like I said, with time and review and just us putting our heads together and coming up with what we need to do better and what we need to avoid in situations like that, like it's a matter of time. I do believe that come another month, come another couple weeks, even by the time the Texas events roll around and stuff, we'll feel like we'll be able to close some of these games out that we're really letting slip away from our hands currently. So
you guys already upset Native Red twice. I think you guys upset G1 not too long ago as well. So I mean, it's there. And then once that consistency starts coming in, there's no way anybody can deny that you guys are next up if they already don't see it by now. If you don't mind,
yeah,
tell me about your journey as a pro player. Like I mean, you talked about playing since Halo 2 and obviously going into Halo 3. Like tell me about your journey, how you've become this pro player that you are today, because it couldn't have been easy.
I mean, man, it's for me, it's been crazy. I mean, a lot of people, everybody has a different story, right? Everybody has a different journey. Some people, you have your Bounds of the world who, infamous online, insane player, goes to his first tournament, has a great showing his first tournament, places, top whatever, at Raleigh. I don't even remember at this point what FaZe got, top 6, I think, at Raleigh, for his first tournament. And then you've got players out there like, like me who, it took me several lands before I started, making my way into the top 16, top 12, whatever the case is. So, I don't know. I mean, I went to probably 6, 7 different MLG events like throughout like Halo 3 and Reach when I was younger. Um, didn't have the money to go to like every single LAN. Like, obviously I'm in a better position now to be able to go to every tournament. And obviously esports is a way different place now than it was back then. But, I went to a bunch of LANs back then, didn't really have like a ton of success, going to the early tournaments and early LANs during those times. I mean, probably, late round open bracket performances and stuff. Nothing, I never made champ bracket in those days. And then it wasn't until, Halo 4 came out, took a big break, didn't play any of Halo 4 at all, didn't go to any AGLs, any of those tournaments. And then H2A came out 2015 when HCS first inception, HCS, right? H2A. Went to a couple of those tournaments, but again, those were so small. I mean, most of those H2A tournaments back then, you're looking at 40 teams max. But, did that, competed, was like 10th seed for a little bit at the end of H2A. So, I mean, I was pretty close. H5 came out, took another break, started playing H5 probably a year and a half after it came out. Started going to tournaments for that. Started basically from the bottom again, going to my first tournaments there, getting, whatever, fifth round, sixth round, whatever the case is, till like 2017, 2018 H5, getting like top 24, top 20 every tournament, top 18, randomly enough. And then Pro Series, like online stuff started happening. And I told myself, I was like, man, my biggest regret through all this whole thing is like, I didn't really have to take a break for H4. I really didn't, it was just my personal choice. I didn't really like the game, stuff like that. But I told myself, I could easily, sit out all this online stuff while there's no LANs, no HCS stuff going on, while Infinite's coming out, all this stuff, or I can put teams together, compete in them, get practice against the best teams during that time because there's not a ton of teams playing. So I'm playing against, the Sins, the Uniteds, whoever is playing at the time, getting good reps in during that. Basically, got top 8 throughout all of the Halo 3 Pro Series online, top 8 through all of the H2A Pro Series online, made every Pro Series for H5. I think I'm one of few, like if you go back and look at like the wikis and that stuff, I think I'm one of the few people outside of like the top players that like can say that I was in the Pro Series for Halo 3, Halo 2 Anniversary, and Halo 5 during that time. So again, not to try to pat myself on the back for that, because I mean that's a hard feat
It's
alone. But again,
deserved.
all online. But I mean, I look at that stuff and how serious I was taking it, and the time that I was putting in, the reps that I was getting against those players, and I think I transitioned that into how this game started off, and double scrimming every day during the auction days and stuff. And it's been a grind. It's been a long time coming, but it's just the way that I've looked at the game and the things that I've adapted my game to, and how we've looked at it from like a team perspective has evolved so much from the first lane and even Halo 5, and doing that stuff to like where we're at now. I really think that that's been like the biggest transition of my game, is just like how much I learned over like that small little window from even H5 and like the online stuff to like now. Has just been, I mean, my transition from then to now is just insane from like a knowledge perspective.
You mentioned you know, people having different journeys, like you mentioned, like Bound. Not anything wrong with it whatsoever, but just like Bound's journey versus your journey and some other competitors. Does the journey that you ultimately had to go through help shape the competitor that you are today, and how?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can look back on like their journey and say that they had different moments throughout that time that's really like, shaped who they are as a player, as a person. Every experience impacts you one way or another, right? And I think one thing that I learned from, my early days of competing, the first few tournaments, Halo 3 Reach, stuff like that, to like now, is I've always been a loyal guy. I've always, for me, I'm ride or die with my teammates. Early on, I think it was to a fault. Like I stuck with the same people, even if we couldn't really compete, just because they were my friends and I wanted to play, and like I wanted to compete, wanted to win with my friends rather than just go and jump onto different teams. And obviously, I could become friends with new teammates or whatever. Like that's not a problem. But I don't know. It's like the native red approach, right? Like for me, it's they're all great players. They all could, we've seen Manny on E United. We've seen different rosters. We saw Super CC on the team for a little bit. So they've had like a couple different changes. But at the end of the day, like those guys want to win with with their boys, with their with their friends. They could go on other teams. I'm sure Talluk would be a great player on another roster. Crook would be a great player on another roster. Whatever. But that's kind of like my approach too. Is like at the end of the day, like I don't want to team with people just to team with them just because they're good. Like I want to be with people that trust me, are loyal, respect me, and as long as I've got that, I'm willing to put in the work with whoever and just get it out the mud. That's kind of been my approach throughout the whole thing. Give me whatever roster. Believe in me. I'll believe in you. We'll make it happen.
I I love that attitude. Especially I feel like I'm the total opposite. F you and F all of you. I don't give a damn. I switch up real quick. People be like, don't forget your day ones. I got amnesia. I don't know what you're talking about. Who are you? You wasn't with me shooting in the gym. No,
but they were.
I'm joking.
They were. That's the crazy part. People forget that. People forget that.
No, but I'm joking. But for real, I love that attitude. I really do. And it's not even just like you're just talking to talk. Like look at the track record. You're about that, and I love that.
For me, that's my biggest joy. Is like like I said, I want to see individual growth. I want to see myself get to where I want to be. But there's nothing better than being able to sit there and say, look, it wasn't just me that got doubted, right? Like you're doubting Posey, people are doubting Breaking Shot, people are doubting Monster, right? Like, all right, cool. Like we'll put the work in. We believe in each other. We'll get out the mud. And at the end of the day, like if opportunities present themselves and you can jump up to like a higher caliber team, go ahead and take it. But if I'm on a team and I get an offer with another team that I feel like I can already beat, already on a caliber of, it's like, bro, like I'm just gonna beat them with my boys. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason for me to switch up. I have full faith, full confidence.
Well, you and your boys, I guess minus Monster, then with Haynes, went into Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
You competed through the open bracket, saw you in pool play. You end up getting top 12, but it's easy to say that. I'm sure there's a lot that happened in between that. Can you talk to me a little bit about Charlotte?
So you want me to just jump into Charlotte? You want me to talk like leading up to Charlotte? Because it was kind of crazy like leading up to it.
Let's start with leading up to it. I'm sure that was important too. Please, the floor is yours.
So obviously into season 1, I'm on oxygen. Went out, had Haynes, had Name, had Swish, had Cherish for a little bit. Obviously had different successes there, but didn't really ever like get to the point where like we thought we were capable of getting to like with those rosters. After Kansas City going into Orlando and like the super and all that stuff went out, made some changes, went and grabbed Triton from Complexity, went and got Bohm, went and got Nemesis, right? Put together a whole different team. Was feeling really, really good. Like double scrimming, like putting in all this time, effort, feeling really, really good. Going into like the super. Going to the super, beat FaZe in pools, go out, which was like a big, obviously game 5 against the new FaZe roster, Renegade, Spartan, Foul, Bound, do all that. And then I think for us, it just kind of like started falling apart after that. And then, they went out, got Collect. I wasn't mad about it really. I mean, obviously I put in all the work with those boys and I really was excited to go to a LAN with them because I felt like we had the potential, and obviously you saw what they did, right? I mean, I'm not saying that putting me in for Collect, I'm going to go and get those placings at Orlando or Worlds, but I believed in the team with me. I believe in the team with Collect, whatever. But things kind of fell apart, whatever. Orlando came around. I was sitting there. I'm like, man, like there's one team that I'd want to go with, because it was like literally the day before roster locks. That kind of sucked. I got dropped like literally like I had like 24 hours to find a team. And I was like, man, there's only like one team that I'd want to even go with. Otherwise, like I live in Florida, I'm going to go play the FFA, go hang out, like whatever, but like I won't compete. Hit up Haynes, who was team with Posey, Rob at the time. And I was like, hey, I know you guys have a full team, but this just happened. If you guys are interested, like I'm down, like let's do it. And they made the decision to make a roster change, pick me up. We went and, literally we're 4 kills off of qualifying for Worlds and taking Complexity's spot in the play-in, which obviously sucked that we didn't get that done, but, did that. And then leading up to Charlotte, had some turmoil, the team split up, had different teams going on. A team with Breaking Shot and a couple different people. Haynes and Posey did some stuff. Posey did some stuff with Envor and Neuronical and a bunch of stuff. Whatever. We ended up coming back together, me, Haynes, and Posey, for Charlotte, and ran games with Cherish, ran games with Breaking Shot, whatever. Picked up Breaking Shot, went into it, and from that point on, like, we just kind of like put our heads down. We knew where we were at. We knew the foundation that we built, like even post Orlando, like leading up to Charlotte. And I during that time that I wasn't teaming with Posey and Haynes, I was teaming with Breaking Shot and basically doing the same exact stuff that I was doing with Haynes and Posey. So Breaking Shot already knew a lot of the same stuff that, like, from a system perspective, that we had been going over with the other two. So I felt like it was a natural fit. And we went into Charlotte like super, super confident. I mean, open bracket, whatever. Like, we knew, looking at the teams that were there, like, you give us any of those guys that we could play, we're in those series. Obviously, some more challenging than others, whatever, but we felt confident playing any team in open bracket. Went and, lost early. Not early, but lost a series that we didn't think we should have in winners to a European team. Shout out those guys. Played them at Orlando. They made a roster change. Played them again at Charlotte in a best of 3, and they ended up beating us winners 4. So it knocks us into losers pretty early. When we were expecting to make it all the way to like winners finals and play, like, I think it would have been like Complexity or Native Red was kind of like what we were projected to play on like the winner side. But anyways, got knocked to losers, which I think was a good thing for us, kind of like a reality check, kind of in a sense, like, hey, like, one more loss and you guys are, out of the tournament. So backs against the walls, we kind of like went through and played kind of like a little mini gauntlet through open bracket, beat Tony and Envor, beat Huss and King J and those guys, beat 6 Karma, Sep Stars and Strikey and those guys, which were like our final match and losers, beat like, I don't know, Squilly's team, Sylvanic's team. So I mean, it was a decent little run that we built up, going into pools. Then we got pools and we came out, Saturday, our first match of pools with Shopify. And after Orlando, Shopify for us was they were our boogeyman. Literally our boogeyman. They put that roster together, dude. Good luck. Could not take a game from them online, basically. I mean, we'd be lucky to get like 2 games in the scrim against them. They were just insane. Came out, played them, beat them our first match of pools, 3-1. And at that point, we were like, all right, like, and it was, they might have been dealing with some stuff. I don't really know, like, what was going on their side, but I mean, there's a bunch of stories, whatever. But we came out, it was pretty easy. To be fair, it was pretty easy when we beat them. It was 3-1, but it was pretty easy. So we gained all the confidence in the world from that. Went out, played FaZe. It was FaZe, it was okay, but we got 3-0'd by FaZe. Then we played Na'Vi, and we knew going into Na'Vi that, like, based on the way that the pools were set up and like that we had already beat Shopify, who Na'Vi had lost to, that all we had to do, like, Na'Vi basically had to 3-0 us to get the placing in pools to get top 12 to move on, and we took game 1 right off the bat. So we already knew that we had basically advanced at that point. I mean, we didn't know for sure. We still had to wait for like official word, but in our head we were like, yeah, cool, like, we're good. Made it in, and then drew Native White for top 8, which we had never played before. Obviously, I've played against all those players. Tapping, I played at Orlando. He's the one that gate kept me from making worlds at Orlando. Obviously, long history with Gil. Nicklin's obviously an insane player. Barcode, insane player. So we like knew what we were up against, and then had that series against them. And game 1, game 2. When you go back and watch it, obviously we'll get a chance to see one of those games here in a little bit. But man, felt like we were up 2-0 in that series the way those games were going. Felt like we were up 2-0 in that series for top 8. And it's crazy because, I mean, we were just on the wrong side of history. I mean, they had a historic run, open bracket to top 4, and all the clutch moments they had, all the ice they had. And, looking back on it, like, yeah, we made some mistakes, but man, we were just on the wrong side of history there, I feel like. So, really feel like, again, from a confidence perspective, I mean, even losing Haynes and picking up Monster, like, we're feeling really good.
I'll be the judge of how close you were as Native White, and when we go to film, no, I'm joking. No, but from watching it, and I've even watched I watched half of the game, and yeah, I don't realize, bro. I'm not gonna drop any hints, but damn, y'all were really frying, bro. Like,
Yeah,
really.
it's it's tough, man. Because that's the crazy part about like games in general. Because you can go from hot to the other team icing up and making one play to change the momentum, and pulling out a W and then pulling out another W, and now you're looking at a run where they're beating G1, they're beating Sin when they're down. I mean, they had a run against Sin game 5, I believe, on Streets where they were down 10, 12 kills late in that game, came back and won the game 5 against Sin. I mean, their run to top 4 was impressive. And, again, like I couldn't even be mad losing the way that we did. And it's just learning experience for us. And the more learning experience we have, the more dangerous we're going to be the rest of the season. So looking forward to hopefully maybe getting another chance to play them at one of these next events. So